What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, it's Scott DeLong with the CEO Podcast. I'm here as always with my partner, Vince Moiso.
Hey guys.
And today we have a special guest, Dave Farrow. Dave has a lot of credibility in the area that we're going to be talking about. Guinness World Record holder, and then the activity that it took to get that published and publicized and all. Met Dave through was working towards trying to understand the public relations world. I had dabbled my feet in it last year a little bit as we published our book. And while the people did exactly what they said they're going to do, it certainly wasn't anywhere near the expectations that I had based on what was in my mind. So
you're talking about someone other than me, though, right? You're talking about the previous people you were working with. Right?
The first folks, right?
Just want to make sure some people like jumping in, right? I don't want to confuse them.
Yeah, so I'll tell a little bit about our experience with you folks as well. Sure. But the piece that I had to learn and go through in order to actually, I think, do it right. And right now I'm in feeling that we're doing it right. So Dave, if you will, talk a little bit about you, your company, your background a little bit to get the audience started.
Well, sure. Yeah, a lot of people might be surprised that I never intended to become a marketing guy or a PR guy. Never really, grew up aspiring to that. I was a business owner, still am. I started off, I definitely have a great credential. Getting out of high school, I got in the Guinness Book of Records for my memory. That and $1 would get me a cup of coffee back then, at least. Now it's $5. And I joke around, but obviously I'm very, very proud of my Guinness record. It was very difficult to achieve, but it's a really good lesson to understand that the credential does nothing for you unless you know how to market it. I know personally several people who have Guinness records for memory, I know Olympic world record holders, gold medalists, things like that, and they don't have any way of monetizing it. They're great people, really kind people. They just didn't have that entrepreneurial mindset. So I was in a situation where I had, some memory courses, some brain training stuff, really good stuff. I wanted to sell it. And the media was just not interested after they covered the Guinness record. For about a week, I was famous and then nothing. And I was hooked. And here I thought, this Guinness record was going to be, sky was going to open up and money was going to fall out. And I was a bit naive that way, as it turns out. But so what I figured out really quickly, though, is how media works. And I believe I kind of figured out something a little bit before other people have figured it out when it comes to when an individual wants to get media attention. We're talking getting on television, podcasts, radio. Yes, there's still radio, satellite radio as well, especially millions of people listen to it. A lot of truckers, for example. Then, of course, everything online, the influencer world, YouTubers, everybody else, right up to high-end newspapers, magazines, and the Today Show and everything. So I wanted to get as much publicity as I could. And long story short, I had to get a story. So I started doing research to find stories based around memory, things like Alzheimer's Awareness Month and, kids going back to school. And I got really, really good at figuring out just a story that was going on. And then I could basically pitch myself as the expert who can comment on the story. And that is really the formula. If anybody's listening, I'm giving all the good stuff away for free. I'm not going to hold back, especially not on your podcast. You're a great guy. Everybody deserves to know the best. But typically, if a PR company is doing publicity for an author, let's say, they will tell the media, they'll kind of feed their ego. They'll tell the media, hey, this author is great. They're brilliant. They're awesome. It's going to be an exciting show. All that stuff is great, but there's no reason to buy now. That is the single most important thing. There's no reason to put them on the air today as opposed to 2 weeks from now. So then they just delay. Other news pops up and they get dismal results in PR and they wonder why. We don't feed people's ego. We fill their calendar. basically. So this is what we did with you as well, Scott, is we find your topic, we find your story, but then we go out and look for what people are searching for. We look at Google Trends, we look at social media trends, Twitter or X now, things like that. And we look for the keywords, right? And we came across a really great hook for you, because we were looking for keywords in this space, and we found out a lot of people were researching essentially how generations. I mean, without going too far into it, Scott. I mean, you're kind of basically a coach consultant for a lot of corporations, and you're fantastic at what you do. But I think it's safe to say there are a lot of people in that space, right? It's really hard to differentiate yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what we found in that space is that a lot of people were talking about Gen Z and how that new generation was really kind of disrupting or not working with the office environment. We talked to you and said, hey, I've got some great content to talk about how Gen Z can better fit into the office, how we've got to meet them where they're at with technology, things like that. And that was the pitch that we did. But the reason it worked is because we already knew people were searching for it. We had trend lines where, like, the trends are going up for searching for Gen Z and things like that. So when we tell journalists, hey, search terms for Gen Z has doubled in the last 3 months. This term and this trend is happening, and the job market is happening this way. And so we give them the data, and we say that it's trending, then they are salivating to interview you, as opposed to us really having to fight to have them interview you, because journalists are looking for clicks too. That's the long and the short of it. When you give them what they're looking for, they're under a lot of pressure to do that. If you say, hey, this is what people are clicking on, then we can get someone like you, a consultant that does a lot of great things, but isn't like super famous for any one thing, or not super famous really in that space, and we can get you kind of to that top of the mountain with that story. So why don't you tell them what results we got from some of these pitches, and just kind of this different approach?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to double down on what you said, was that the thing that you did different, that certainly I didn't do myself, and then the previous PR company didn't do, was look for those things that are hot topics that we could tie into. That made a huge difference in the amount of people that are now reaching out to me for whatever expertise I can provide on that. As opposed to, here's what I talk about. I talk about building trust in organizations and making teams work better. And So what, right?
Yeah.
But what your group did is you found what was hot, you came back, and we worked together to say, well, what do you have on this area and that area? And then your team created the pitch points that they would go out to. So it's not just the Rolodex, old term, I know, but the Rolodex that the PR company has, but the collaboration with the client that was so much different than my first experience with public relations.
Well, I heard something even above and beyond that, though. I heard him say that he actually gathered empirical data that he's providing to the press that drives them to make a decision as to why that's a hot topic and why you would want Scott DeLong to come on this particular show. I think that's I know that from any world, it's fine. It's only anecdotal, right? Like you come and say, hey, this is a hot search term, right? It's only anecdotal until you're supplying empirical data that shows that it really is, and it's a hot topic among business owners or whoever that is. So that stood out for me as being super different, because even when Scott and I share a similar story with the launch of my own book several years ago, just didn't go anywhere near the way that I expected it to, and was hugely disappointed with it.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad to hear you say that. Not glad to hear you say you were disappointed with the results, but the previous thing is I was glad to hear, because we really embrace data in this business, and I think we're kind of unique. I don't want to disparage any of my competitors, but there does, and my belief is that a lot of people who get into PR, they're more relationship oriented people. They're more, right brain, that sort of thing. And it makes sense. We're making relationships with the media all the time. That's really important. But they don't think, how can I bring data science into publicity, right? It's just, I think they just don't even ask the question. And we didn't just ask the question. We've been doing this and tweaking the process for years and perfecting it.
Well, you know what? When I heard that too, the thing that I talked about, and or the thing that I thought about that I'm curious to hear from you, is it probably creates a lot of stickiness. And so as I'm hearing you speak, I'm also thinking like I was 10 years ago, I was on a reality television show. It was an incredible experience. I actually just finished up a book on that experience, and it's really cool. But I've never done, I was thinking when you were talking about the Olympic gold medalists and those people that just haven't found ways to really leverage that. And it just faded, right? So like I was famous for a couple of weeks and then it just drops off of a cliff. It doesn't create, there's no stickiness. But I feel like
the Guinness Record, it was great, big ego trip, but it wasn't long-term results until you learn how to tell a good story.
Well, not only that, though, as I just think when you pull data across how that relates, right? So when I heard not just the story, I heard you say you found how to take that experience and relate it to other really hot topics like Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is really close to me. My dad passed away of Alzheimer's. You say that word, it's such a trigger for me. But I love that. Like, I love the concept of what you were saying is how you became relatable to something that a lot of people in this country are dealing with. And so I think that's the difference. Like when I was hearing you, I was hearing just those little sweet things that were the difference maker into how you're going to market with PR.
It makes a lot of sense in hindsight. Like when you do it and it works really well, you look at it and go, oh yeah, it's clear that's why it worked. But when you're like building it from the beginning and we're doing something that nobody else really has done, then we didn't see it. Now I want to make a distinction here. There might be some people, the comment section and everything, who are comparing this to headline jacking. I believe is the term. And that was something that came out, I want to say the early 2000s and stuff. It's similar to this. I only learned about headline jacking like much later, but basically that is more like a headline comes across like about Beyonce or something, and you pitch the media like that weekend and you try to get on a show that day and stuff. What we do is a bit more stable because we follow kind of a meta trend. We look for something that is going to basically go over the course of a 3-month period, like a larger trend. So we look at the demographics, we look at like different age, gender, races if necessary, depending on the topic, things like that, different areas of the country. And of course, we look at like jobs and how it relates to work and things like that. And it's that focus that gives us kind of a reason to get on the air right now, and it's still hot, but it's not like you're under so much pressure that you have to do it like Friday because this news is going to expire soon. And so that's been our focus. So we try to tell more of a story than just kind of a flash in the pan.
So let's talk a little bit about results then, because you did ask, and I'm going to tell you what you guys have done for us so far, and we're just starting, right? We're just really getting started with this process, but I've had authors from places like Newsweek, places like Wall Street Journal, places like HR.com that have interviewed me for their stories, but they've also gotten me byline articles, asked me to write an 800 to 1,200 word article for other publications that are out there. The podcast thing, you get a lot of those as well. I think that's not as hard to get. Like personally for myself, if I wanted to go get a bunch of podcasts, I probably could. But getting into those articles and getting into those authors, not something I would have even been able to do. One, because I don't have the contacts, but two, because I didn't have the pitch angle. And the pitch angle is really the thing that made the difference. It just did. And that came from all this empirical evidence that your research showed. What do they need to write about? Right?
Absolutely, and we know what they're under pressure to do right now. But yeah, I mean, we won't get into dollars and cents, but many people, like just the Wall Street Journal alone, people have paid double, triple what you're doing to get into even one publication like that. It is so much competition for some of these things that that's why our approach is working so well with that. But of course, we are full service, so we're going to pitch to everybody, and we're going to get some podcasts and stuff. We make sure there's a good audience though. Like most of the podcasts are, at least like 100,000 downloads or something. Some of them are several million. Some of them are huge. So I think we do a little bit better there too. But Newsweek, yeah, you had a great spread in Newsweek because of this. And I don't think we would have gotten that with any other process. There's no way.
I don't think so either. So let's talk a little bit about the other side and some of my experience to the other side, which I'm going to consider. Yes, I pay for the services for Farrow Communications, certainly, but it's not a pay to play concept, which is what I've seen with a lot of other PR folks. Give you a quick example of with another firm. They got me some really cool things, right? They got me on a television show in Las Vegas. And I thought, well, that's great. Come to find out, that is something that they're paying for to get their clients onto that television show. They got me a really cool billboard for 15 seconds in Times Square, and that made a really cool clip. But that's all pay to play. And then there's other pay to play that people ask for all the time. I get these business journals saying, "Hey, we can write a feature article on you. It's only going to cost you X." Or who's who in America, right? First time I got that 30 years ago.
Yeah,
and then
exciting.
the came across. I'm thinking, what? So this pay to play thing, and it gets you placed in places, but
but who's
that
really
negative stigma of it's not real.
Well, I mean, the simple fact is that if you can pay for it, then anybody can pay for it, and there's no level of quality, right? So when we do something, we always find that the organic results are unpredictable. We can't pick our shots necessarily, but in terms of value for money and time, it always outperforms the pay per play. And a lot of that pay per play, people don't realize it expires. It goes away after a little while. It's not where people read it. I mean, you had several people with Wall Street Journal just texting you out of the blue because they read you and you didn't even tell them about it. Like, because you were very prominently featured. That only comes through organic. There's some things that you can only get with quality, right?
Well, so and there's requirements on my end as well, right? So you're going to get the access. Mm-hmm. Now, you as the proprietor, myself, need to perform, need to do a good job for that author, for that journalist, for that wherever you're in front of. Because if not, you're going to be on the floor, right? You're going to be clipped out and not going to be used at all. So
you were very coachable. Just for the record, for everybody who's listening, all of our clients, we do mock interviews, we do media training, so they're all ready and everything. And you took the coaching very well. I thought your interviews were fantastic.
Well, you should have seen me 30 years ago. Probably not nearly as much. I knew more than my coaches at that time. So
Dave, you should have seen when we started the podcast. Jeez, man.
I will. I'll rewind. Now everybody has to go back to the first episode and watch it. There you go.
Yeah, I think being coachable, listen, if that's my business, if I'm a coach and I'm telling people telling other CEOs they need to be coachable,
right? Yeah,
and I'm not, come on. Yeah. We just had an example. I'm with a group right now that is a professional speakers group. And they have boot camps and they have master classes and they have these four guys that started this are high end dudes. They're really good at their craft and we created a little sizzle reel on our own here between me and my team and put some things together. And I thought it looked pretty good. It was kind of cool. I sent it to these guys and specifically asked for critique. I think this is good. I think it can be better here and here. What do you think? And for me not to listen to experts, people that are doing this for a living at a high level, would have been for me not to ask them, first of all, thinking, hey, this looks great, let's roll. For me not to ask them, it shows a level of arrogance, but then asking them and then listening to find out what could we do better, I think matters. I think it just matters to be able to be coachable.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Right?
Agreed.
So So I
Yeah.
appreciated the time that I got to spend with you on that one-on-one as well. So that was really helpful.
Hey,
Yeah.
I want to go back. I want to go back to this topic of expiration. I think it's an important one. And Dave, you used a couple different contexts, and then you brought it up again, talking about just an article that goes out if it's not organic, right? A pay for that just expires very quickly when you stop paying for it. But I loved I think you used the example of Beyonce, right? Which is a hot topic in the moment. But when we're talking about you brought up Alzheimer's earlier. That's just an ongoing topic. It's always hot and interesting. You brought up with Scott specifically Gen Z and how to integrate Gen Z into the workplace. Like that's not going away.
Yeah.
That's a topic. If you own and run a business right now, millennials, right? So like we can go on and on, but there's so many different topics. I think that's a really key piece to what you're saying, at least what I've heard, is that the ability for focusing on something that's going to be around for a while, right? So it's hot now and going to be hot for some time. There's no expiration on that. And then I heard you say the more organic the PR is, the stickier that gets. It has some longevity.
Well,
Is
and
that
there's also
accurate?
actually there's some editorial choices that these media outlets do as well, where they will, if you do a pay-per-play, you get to look in the fine print, but sometimes that article that you write and everything is up for 6 months and then taken down. And so you can say you were in entrepreneur.com, but I'm still there. Who else is, right? Like that makes a huge difference. And I did that, like I did entrepreneur.com like 3 years ago, for example. So you lose out on the longevity, and that's a real powerful thing. I actually had one client call it publicity equity. So if you like, you're in the Wall Street Journal, you're on that website forever. One of the things you didn't even realize, you might see some of the data later on, speaking of data, is that Google is going to notice. And we fight really
Yeah.
hard to make sure your website is in these articles, your name, keywords are listed in the article, like the words you're trying to go for, things like communication and things like that.
And the
So
backlinks that come back to, right?
that's exactly it. Yeah. So today, Google has changed. A lot of people don't realize. Well, it's going on a little bit now. Around 2001, it really changed. It has really focused on the authority ranking for websites. So just to give people some background, if you ever did SEO in the past, it did change. You would like write an article and then you'd have an AI rewrite it like 1,000 times, and then it would go on like 1,000 different article sites, and then that would raise your rankings in Google. Google has squashed all of that. In fact, some rankings you're actually going to be penalized if you try some of those old tactics. What does work though is you get your backlink in an authority ranked site, and they have a certain ranking system and everything. All the top ranked stuff is media. All of it, like however partisan you want, you can look where the listings are. It's all the right, the left, the middle, everything, the niche stuff. It's all media. So just getting one or two articles in there, that makes your SEO like bulletproof for the next 10 years. You don't have to pay anything else for that. And so we actually have had a rise in the number of people come on to our system, and they're saying we want these keywords and we want this type of story and we want to get in this tier of website, and they don't care about getting on TV even and things like that. So that's the new world. So that's the whole expiry date thing. If you just do a pay per play, it doesn't crawl in the same way as well. You don't get as much credit, although there is some flexibility in that. Like if somebody does come to us and they want to pay per play, we do give them like really good prices. We give them the prices that we get. We have some relationships and we can do some of that. But time and time again, our organic outperforms.
Makes sense. Makes total sense.
I was absolutely not interested in the pay-for-play world. I mean, give an example of the stickiness, Vince. The billboard that I got on Times Square was 15 seconds, right? And you better be there with your camera if you want any longevity at all, and then promote the heck out of that myself. I thought it was really cool, but it didn't do me a bit of good.
Well, and that's, we could talk in the self-help world and the marketing world about like, are we just feeding the egos of our clients, or are we really serving them? Right. And I've found when you pull, because I mean, honestly, like a journalist doesn't care about you, doesn't care about me. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah, of
Cares about
course.
their numbers, cares about their rankings, things like that. So that's why we pitch that way. So when a client comes on, they're paying a whole bunch of money. I mean, some companies have found that if they can just stroke the ego of that client, then they can, they can make some money. There is a service you can just contact the billboard company yourself and get on there for 15 seconds. I believe I know
Sure.
the people you're talking about that do that whole thing, they buy a little bit of block of time and they chop it up. But honestly, it's something you can do yourself. You want to maybe go to an expert to do something that you can't do yourself.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna. So let's talk about PR in general, right?
Mhm.
So I'm 64 years old, and until I turned 63, I never even thought about doing any PR. And wasn't until I put a book out that I thought, well, maybe this will help. And that's as far as I got through my whole business career in doing any public relations at all. Give me the generalized benefits that you see for people. Let's talk about people that are starting
Yeah.
30 years earlier than I did. The generalized benefits of those folks where they might have an entrepreneurial business. So some of our listeners, entrepreneurial business that's doing well. They're making money. They're spending all their money to try to make more money, but that's kind of typical entrepreneurs. What can a strong PR process do for those folks?
Well, I can definitely talk about some of the benefits. I also want to say, a few more tips that people can use, because I'm a big believer. Like, even if you're not ready to become a client of ours, I want you to, get something out of our
Thank
time
you.
together, and even this interview as well.
Yeah,
But
love that.
yeah. So one of the things we employ is we call it memorable marketing. It actually uses a lot of the memory techniques and neuroscience that I've known in my previous life as the memory guy, and we apply it to marketing. So one of the reasons why this works. Well, first I'll answer your question more directly. There's a few benefits you might not even realize. The biggest one is credibility. In today's day and age of like so many people can do false flexing online. They can make a website, they can look really big when they're not, things like that. And you don't really know if somebody is credible, but when you have a third party brand like a CNN or something that does an interview, there is a vetting process. There is just by tying yourself to that brand, you are insured, you are safe. I was talking to a meeting planner actually, and she was very candid about how when she hires speakers, she makes sure that speakers have some top tier publicity. And I was like, well, yeah, of course, you want to get somebody who's famous on stage. And he goes, no, that's not why I do it. And she told me, and she was a little cheeky about it, but she told me that she doesn't know if someone's going to have a scandal, if they're going to have a DUI or some other, they're going to be in jail after they do the gig with me, and then that's going to reflect on me. I don't want to lose my job, right?
Mm.
So, but she said that if a person is in Newsweek, like we got you, for example, and we bring you into the company, pay you a whole big bunch of money. If you go do something crazy afterwards, she can always say, well, he was in Newsweek, like, I didn't do anything wrong. And it's that third party brand that becomes like a safety valve. It makes people feel safe. And that's why actually a lot of our clients, they tell us that the big surprising part was that they were able to raise their fees. And it almost happened organically, even because there's just this higher perceived value. When your brand is tied to a bigger brand, you see your value goes up. So whether it's speaking fees or consultants fees, those things can go up when you have that notoriety.
CYA is a huge motivator, I think.
Yeah, over here. That's right.
All right, let's come back. We're getting close to the end here, but let's come back to the tips
Wow.
that you want to bring.
Sure. So the here's an idea of one of the reasons why our approach works, and it has to do with the reticular activating filter, the RAF, or sometimes called RAS, reticular activating system. It's a mechanism in the brain, and essentially it will govern what we focus on and what we pay attention to. So if you ever bought a car and you never bought that model of car, let's say you bought a Volkswagen Beetle or something, right? All of a sudden you notice every Volkswagen Beetle around you,
Yeah.
right? You didn't
Yep.
notice until you bought the thing. That's your filter that switched. Now you're aware of it, right? So that is going on all the time. So one of the challenges is how do we pitch people? How do we sell? Well, the smart thing to do is to tap into what their reticular activating filter is already looking for. And that was kind of the initial thought behind the way we process things, the way we pitch, is we look for what the media is already looking for. And I tell this to my clients all the time. It doesn't even just apply to PR. If you're trying to sell somebody on something and you have to convince them that they have the need first before you convince them that you're the right person to buy from, you won't make the sale. Like, you basically have to prove two things, right? But if you go up to somebody who already thinks they need something and you're just like, hey, here's this thing that you're looking for and I'm just providing it, then that means that you're just showing up and their reticular activating filter is finding you. Now, this understanding this principle explains click-through rates, it explains conversion rates, it explains in high amounts of responses in PR. All of these things, you've got to get inside the head of, in my case, it's producers and authors and journalists and things like that. But in your case, it'd be inside the head of your customer. What do they wake up in the morning already looking for? What are they looking for? What the pain points, whatever you want to call it, and then you become like you package your marketing to be what they're looking for, not to convince them that they need you, but to convince them that you are the right thing that they already think they need. It's that shift that is all the difference. It's not just a 1 or 2% change like that. That'll change your sales. If you look at every funnel, everything, that's probably the biggest neuroscience principle we try to use is to think, what is this sector looking for already?
Love that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I
Makes
can
sense.
actually add a couple more tips if you want. Like, one of the other things in our copywriting, we actually write the copy so that people will visualize you on the air or visualize you in the interview. So you want to speak in the present tense about you doing the interview. You want, instead of the future possible tense, you want to be like Scott's interview will focus on such and such, right? It sounds very simple, but it makes a huge difference than if you say, hey, if you have Scott on the air, he would focus on this. It's not just a confidence thing. It's if you can get them to visualize it, then a part of your brain thinks it actually happened, right? Think of
I call it's the presumptive close. I
yeah.
love it. It's a huge psychological tactic, and it's so good, man. I love that you're saying that.
Yeah, and we'll do things like ask questions, like what should he wear for these types of interviews, things like that. Anything you can
Yeah.
do to get them to visualize you doing the interview or visualize you writing the article. And if I can get somebody to visualize it, then it's so much more likely that they'll do it, because our brains naturally, when we picture something, part of us thinks it's real. Like, that's why we can watch a movie and love it, even though all of the people in there are like high paid actors. They're all like they're all scammers, right? They're all liars, right? Actors are playing a role, and so, but we can cry, we can laugh, we can get scared. Why is
Yeah.
that? Logically, we know it's not even real, but our brain thinks it's real if you visualize it. If you see it, then it thinks on some level that's actually happening. So if I can get a journalist to see you in their magazine, then on some level we've already won. It's already happening. It's just a matter of how it's going to happen. And that's
So
why the
good.
presumptive close is so powerful. But it's you want to make sure it doesn't come across as arrogant. You want
Right.
to make sure it's more informative, and you want to make sure that you're trying to get them to visualize you
Yeah.
in the actual chair doing the actual thing.
Well, that's a huge balance, right? I am very much against my own self promotion, and at
Yeah.
the same time knowing that that's a necessary tool in order
Mhm.
to get things done. So how do you come across as confident and not arrogant and not cross that line? I mean, that is very, very
I
key
think
to this work.
Well, I think is people get offended if it looks like you're making their decision for them, right? So if you're taking their authority away, that then it'll backfire. So what in my kind of my neuroscience past and my memory techniques, and what we did visualization exercises for self-help and for helping with your diet and sleeping better and all these different things. What we did is we focused on what we're actually picturing, the sensory information. I kid you not, I was doing, and I should actually explain in the audience if you don't know. the reason I do this process now is because I did it for myself. I've been on well over 2,000 interviews. We stopped counting in 2010, but I've been in the New York Times. I've been on the Today Show. I've been on Dr. Oz a couple of times. I've been in Steve Harvey, all the big shows, CNN, major newspapers, things like that. And one of the things that I was really focusing on getting them to do is to visualize me doing it. So when I had somebody interested in having me in studio, I would say things like, and we try this with our clients too. I would say things like, hey, blue really looks well with me. Do you think it'll look okay in the studio? And they'll have to visualize me sitting in the studio in order to answer that question, right? And they'll be sitting on the fence. And when we ask them like just sensory information, how long is the drive from a hotel to, if we want to do an in studio, how long would that drive be from the hotel? Well, they have to visualize that route and me taking that route. So it's like that becomes real. And always when we're able to switch to just the sensory information, I want to help you. I want to be helpful to you. But if you can change it to getting them to visualize the actual thing, then it makes a big difference. So obviously in a pitch copy, we don't do that, but we will have things like we'll describe you talking about some of your principles. We'll describe things that you've said so they could start to visualize how you would approach the story. If we're trying to get articles, we'll describe how quick of a writer you are and how we'll reach the deadline and everything, so they can picture actually getting something on time. So you try not to take their authority away, but you try to get them to visualize the process, if that makes sense.
Great tip.
Makes total sense.
Great tip.
Yeah.
That's what I'm giving you for free. Imagine what we're still keeping inside, huh?
Imagine what. All right. Hey, Dave, really do appreciate this. And we are at time, actually past time. But just like our earlier conversation, it went longer than we had planned because it was so good. This flow, the flow was wonderful. So thank you very much. So
well, and this is one, Scott, you got to listen all the way through. So for those of you that are still with us, thanks for sticking through this whole entire podcast. But this is one, Scott, I think it's important that we because those are nuggets. What he just gave at the end right there, those are the golden nuggets, man. So we gotta make sure that our listeners are listening to this one start to finish.
Definitely. Sure. Dave, thanks again for being with us. And Vince, as always, it's been it's a great way to wake up in the morning, having some fun.
Yeah, it sure is. It is, man. Dave, thanks for your time. Appreciate you very much. And until next time, right? Cheers.
Cheers.
It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.